Arrival without patience. Have you ever felt so tired of trying that you wondered if giving up would hurt less than continuing? This video is for that moment. It is about learning English slowly, through a real-life story in the United States, where climate, culture, love, marriage, and family quietly test your patience every single day. I will tell you how I arrived full of hope but empty of calm, how my impatience almost broke my confidence, and how learning to slow down, in life and in English, changed everything. If you feel stuck, behind, or exhausted, stay with me. I still remember the first morning I woke up in the United States. The light came through the window in a way that felt unfamiliar, sharper somehow, as if even the sun here moved faster. Outside, cars passed without hesitation, people walked with purpose, and everything seemed to say, hurry up. My suitcase sat in the corner, half open, like it was also unsure whether it belonged here. At that moment, I believed excitement would carry me through. I was wrong. What I really carried with me was impatience, and I didn't know it yet. You might think impatience is loud. Anger, frustration, complaining. But mine was quiet. It showed up as rushing my English, rushing my thoughts, rushing my expectations. I wanted to understand everything immediately. I wanted to speak English clearly after a few weeks. I wanted to feel at home in a country that was not built overnight and would not welcome me overnight either. When that didn't happen, my brain began to whisper unhelpful things. You're too slow. Everyone else gets this. Maybe you don't belong here. The climate was my first teacher, even before people were. Where I lived, the weather changed suddenly. Cold mornings, warm afternoons, unexpected rain. In my home country, seasons had a rhythm I understood. Here, my body felt confused, and when the body feels off, the mind follows. Studies in psychology show that sudden environmental changes increase stress hormones like cortisol. Stress reduces your ability to process new information. That includes language. I didn't know the science then. I only knew that my English felt worse on days when the weather felt wrong. So imagine trying to learn English when your brain is already tired from adapting. You listen, but words slide past you. You read, but sentences feel heavy. You speak, but your mouth freezes between thoughts. This is where many people quit. Not because they are lazy, but because impatience tells them they are failing. I felt that temptation early. Standing in a grocery store, unable to understand a simple question, I smiled and nodded, then walked out feeling small. That moment stayed with me longer than it should have. Culture added another layer. In the U.S., conversations are often direct and fast. People value efficiency. They finish your sentences, not to be rude, but to move forward. For a language learner, this can feel like being pulled by the arm while your legs are still learning how to walk. My impatience grew because I compared my inside confusion with everyone else's outside confidence. Comparison is gasoline on the fire of impatience. Neuroscience tells us that comparison activates the brain's threat system, making learning harder. Again, I didn't know the terms. I just felt tired. Here is something important for your English practice. Impatience blocks listening. When you rush to understand, you stop hearing. I noticed that when I relaxed even a little, I caught more words. Simple words. Real English. Not textbook English. People saying, take your time, or it's okay, or no rush. Ironically, the country that felt fast was also quietly telling me to slow down. I just wasn't listening yet. At night, I practiced English by replaying the day in my head. I would choose one small moment and describe it in simple sentences. I went to the store. The cashier smiled. I did not understand the question. I felt nervous. This kind of slow storytelling is powerful. Language research shows that personal narratives improve memory and speaking fluency because emotion anchors words in the brain. You don't need fancy vocabulary. You need honesty and repetition. Still, patience did not arrive magically. I failed many times. I interrupted people because I was afraid of silence. I guessed meanings instead of asking. Each mistake made me more impatient, like quicksand. But one evening, waiting for a bus that was late, something shifted. I had no choice but to wait. No app could speed it up. No effort could change it. And standing there, listening to the sounds around me, I realized this was also English practice. Real listening. No pressure to respond. Just being present. That moment planted a seed. Patience, I began to understand, is not passive. It is active waiting. It is choosing to stay instead of escaping. In language learning, patience means letting meaning come to you instead of chasing it. It means allowing silence. Allowing mistakes. Allowing yourself to be new. When I think back to my arrival in the U.S., I don't remember perfect sentences. I remember feelings. Confusion. Hope. Fear. Curiosity. These are universal. And this is why learning English through story works. Your brain cares about stories because they feel like life. If you are listening to this and thinking, that sounds like me, then you are exactly where you need to be. This first part of my story is not about success yet. It is about standing at the beginning, impatient, unsure, but still here. Still listening. Still trying. And maybe that is enough for today. Climate shock changes everything. Have you ever noticed how your mood changes before you even understand why? One day you feel calm, the next day you feel irritated, tired, and strangely impatient with yourself. When I moved to the United States, I thought climate was just background noise, something you complain about but quickly forget. I was wrong. Climate didn't stay outside. It walked into my body, sat down in my mind, and quietly changed the way I listened, read, spoke, and learned English. In my home country, weather followed a familiar rhythm. Hot meant hot. Rainy meant rainy. Seasons came like old friends you recognized from far away. In the U.S., especially where I first lived, the climate felt unpredictable. Mornings could be cold enough to make your hands stiff, afternoons warm enough to confuse your clothes, and evenings windy like the day had unfinished business. My body didn't know how to prepare, and when your body feels unsafe or uncertain, your brain shifts into survival mode. This matters more than most English learners realize. Neuroscience shows that when the brain senses discomfort, cold, heat, sudden changes, it prioritizes protection over learning. The part of the brain responsible for language processing becomes less efficient. That meant on days when the weather shocked me, my English felt worse. Not because I forgot words, but because my brain was busy managing stress. I used to blame myself. Now I know my nervous system was simply overwhelmed. You may have felt this too. Trying to listen to English while your body feels off is like trying to hear music through a wall. The sound is there, but it doesn't land. On cold mornings, my jaw felt tight, my pronunciation stiff. On hot days, my mind felt slow, heavy. I rushed my listening practice, hoping speed would fix discomfort. It didn't. It made me more impatient. Climate also changed daily routines. In the U.S., people plan around weather in a very practical way. They talk about it constantly, but not emotionally. It's going to snow. Heat wave tomorrow. Simple statements. No drama. That cultural response taught me something important. Americans don't fight the climate. They adjust. And slowly, I realized I was fighting both the weather and the language at the same time. One winter morning, walking to a bus stop under a gray sky, my ears hurt from the cold. A man next to me said, "Cold morning, huh?" I panicked. My brain searched for a perfect response. Nothing came out. Then I just nodded and said, "Yes, very cold." He smiled and said, "It'll get better." That was it. A short exchange. Simple English. But it stayed with me because it matched the moment. Language connected to environment sticks deeper. That's not motivation talk, it's cognitive science. Context strengthens memory. From that day, I stopped separating English practice from the climate around me. If it was raining, I described the rain in simple sentences. It is raining slowly. The street is quiet. People walk faster. If it was sunny, I noticed how people smiled more, spoke lighter. This is how real English lives, not in textbooks, but in weather, movement, and mood. Climate also affected patience in relationships. Cold days made people quieter. Hot days made tempers shorter. I noticed this in myself too. On uncomfortable days, my tolerance for misunderstanding dropped. If I didn't catch a word, frustration came faster. Psychologists call this reduced cognitive flexibility. When physical comfort drops, mental flexibility follows. Knowing this changed how I treated myself. Instead of saying, "My English is bad today," I started saying, "My body is tired today." That shift matters. Self-talk influences learning outcomes. Research shows that compassionate self-talk reduces anxiety and improves language retention. In simple terms, being kind to yourself helps your English grow. Climate taught me that lesson the hard way. There was one summer day when the heat felt unbearable. Air conditioning everywhere, but outside, the air was thick. I sat in a park, listening to people talk. My English felt slow. Instead of forcing practice, I listened without pressure. I let words float by. This passive listening is powerful. Studies in second language acquisition show that low-pressure exposure builds comprehension over time. You don't need to understand everything. You need to stay present. Climate shock also changed my sense of time. In extreme weather, everything feels slower or faster than normal. Waiting for buses in snow, hiding from heat indoors, walking carefully on ice, these moments forced pauses. Those pauses became unexpected language lessons. Waiting gives space for observation. Observation feeds vocabulary. Vocabulary feeds confidence. If you are learning English in a new country, or even through stories online, and you feel impatient, ask yourself a different question. Is it really the language? Or is your body adapting to something new? Climate, environment, routine. These invisible factors shape your learning more than grammar rules ever will. By accepting the climate instead of resisting it, I became calmer. By becoming calmer, I listened better. By listening better, my English improved naturally. Not quickly. Not dramatically. But honestly. This is slow English. Real English. The kind that grows with your life. Climate shock didn't break me. It softened me. It taught me to slow down, to notice, to wait. And in that waiting, language finally had room to enter. Culture moves too fast. There was a strange moment when I realized the United States was not loud, not aggressive, not unkind, but fast. Fast in a way that doesn't wait for you to finish your thought. Fast in a way that assumes you already know what comes next. Standing there, listening to conversations rush past me like traffic on a highway, I understood something uncomfortable. Culture itself was testing my patience, and it was doing it quietly. In the U.S., speed is a habit before it is a choice. People speak as if time is always leaning over their shoulder. They get to the point quickly, cut unnecessary details, and move on without looking back. At first, I believed my English was the only thing slowing me down. I thought if I learned more vocabulary, spoke faster, and answered sooner, I would finally fit into the rhythm. That belief pushed me into exhaustion. Every conversation felt like a race I didn't agree to join. Someone would ask a question, and before my brain finished translating, the moment had already passed. The conversation continued without me, not out of disrespect, but momentum. Cultural psychologists describe this as a low-context, high-speed communication style, where efficiency matters more than shared background. For a language learner, this can feel like being dropped into the middle of a movie without subtitles. My impatience grew from comparison. I compared my inner confusion with other people's outer confidence. That comparison hurt more than any grammar mistake. Neuroscience explains why. When you compare yourself negatively, your brain activates threat responses. Blood flows away from the language centers and toward survival systems. In simple terms, culture shock makes your brain less capable of learning language, exactly when you need it most. I remember sitting in a workplace meeting, listening to ideas bounce back and forth. Jokes, opinions, decisions, everything moved quickly. I understood maybe 60%. Instead of focusing on that 60%, I panicked about the 40 I missed. My body tensed. My listening shut down. This is what impatience does. It narrows attention instead of expanding it. Later, alone, I replayed the meeting in my head. Slowly, I realized something important. Even native speakers don't catch everything. They rely on context, tone, and patterns. They guess. They adjust. They let go. Culture had trained them to move forward, not backward. I was trying to understand perfectly before moving forward, and that was impossible. Once I noticed this, I changed my English practice. I stopped chasing speed and started chasing meaning. In conversations, I focused on the main idea, not every word. Research in second language acquisition confirms this approach. Comprehension grows faster when learners focus on gist before detail. Culture moves fast, but understanding doesn't need to. Silence became another cultural challenge. In many American conversations, silence feels like a problem to solve. Someone fills it quickly. At first, I rushed to fill silence too, afraid it would expose my weakness. I spoke before thinking. Mistakes multiplied. Then I learned something counterintuitive. Pauses are powerful. Short pauses give your brain time to retrieve language. They also signal confidence, even if you don't feel it yet. I practiced pausing deliberately. Breathing. Thinking. Then speaking. My sentences became shorter but clearer. People listened more carefully. Culture didn't punish me for slowing down. It adjusted. That was a turning point. I realized I didn't need to fight the culture's speed. I needed to anchor myself within it. Another lesson came from observation. Americans often repeat key information in different ways without realizing it. If you listen calmly, patterns emerge. Let's circle back. We'll follow up. Sounds good. These phrases appear everywhere. Culture recycles language. By noticing this, my listening improved naturally. Real English is repetitive, not complex. I also learned that impatience is contagious. When I felt rushed inside, I rushed my English practice outside. I skipped slow listening. I avoided repetition. I wanted results quickly. But language doesn't grow under pressure. Studies show that relaxed attention leads to better pronunciation and memory retention. Once I accepted that culture was fast but learning could be slow, my progress felt lighter. One afternoon, someone asked me a casual question, "What do you do?" I paused. I answered slowly, clearly, honestly. The conversation flowed. No one interrupted. No one rushed me. That moment corrected a false belief I had carried for months. Speed was not the requirement. Presence was. Culture moving fast taught me a hidden skill, selective patience. Not patience with everything, but patience with myself. I learned to let conversations go when they moved too quickly. I learned to catch what I could and release the rest. This skill didn't just improve my English. It improved my mental health. If you are listening to this while learning English and feeling left behind, remember this. Culture may move fast, but learning is not a race. Your brain needs time to adapt, especially in a new environment. Slowness is not failure. It is adjustment. Culture didn't slow down for me. I slowed down within it. And that made all the difference. English was my daily struggle. The struggle with English did not arrive all at once. It showed up quietly, hiding inside ordinary days. It was there in the morning when I read signs but only understood half of them. It followed me into conversations where I nodded too much and spoke too little. By the time I realized English had become my daily struggle, it was already shaping how I saw myself in this new country. Every day in the United States demands language. Not the beautiful English from movies or textbooks, but practical English. Fast English. Real English. You need it to ask questions, to explain yourself, to protect your boundaries, and to feel human. Without it, life feels slightly out of focus, like wearing glasses with the wrong prescription. You can function, but everything costs more energy. At first, I believed effort alone would fix the problem. I listened to English while cooking, walking, resting. I read articles, watched videos, repeated sentences. Yet when real conversations happened, my mind went blank. This gap between practice and reality frustrated me deeply. Language researchers call this the transfer problem. Skills learned in low-pressure environments often collapse under real-life stress. Knowing this earlier would have saved me many sleepless nights. My impatience made the struggle heavier. I wanted progress to be visible and fast. When it wasn't, I judged myself harshly. That judgment increased anxiety, and anxiety reduced fluency. It became a loop. The more I wanted to speak well, the worse I performed. Psychologists explain this with the concept of performance anxiety. When you monitor yourself too closely, your brain splits attention between thinking and judging, leaving less energy for speaking. One moment stands out clearly. A coworker asked me a simple question about my weekend. I understood every word. Yet my mouth refused to cooperate. I searched for verbs, lost the sentence, and ended up giving a short, awkward answer. The conversation moved on. I smiled, but inside, something sank. That feeling, being understood less than you understand yourself, is emotionally exhausting. Daily struggles also appeared in listening. English in real life does not pause. People reduce sounds, connect words, and speak with accents shaped by region and background. My brain tried to translate everything word by word. That strategy failed quickly. Listening became tiring, not because English was hard, but because my approach was wrong. Research in applied linguistics shows that fluent listeners do not translate. They predict. They use context to guess meaning before words finish. Once I learned this, I changed how I listened. Instead of chasing every word, I listened for direction. Is this a question? A suggestion? A complaint? This shift reduced mental load and increased comprehension. English started to feel less like noise and more like intention. Speaking improved slowly when I stopped aiming for perfection. I practiced simple sentences aloud, describing real actions. I am waiting for the bus. I feel tired today. This is confusing. These sentences may sound basic, but they mirror real thought patterns. Cognitive science shows that language learned through embodied experience, what you are actually doing, sticks longer and feels more natural. Reading was both a comfort and a challenge. Written English gave me time. I could pause, reread, and think. But reading also exposed gaps in vocabulary that speaking allowed me to hide. Instead of avoiding those gaps, I wrote them down. Not long lists, just words that appeared repeatedly in my life. Bills, schedules, emails, instructions. Practical vocabulary built confidence faster than abstract words ever did. There were days when English felt like a wall between me and people I cared about. Misunderstandings happened. Jokes fell flat. Emotions got lost. On those days, patience felt impossible. But something unexpected happened when I allowed myself to admit struggle. Saying, "I'm still learning," softened conversations. It invited kindness. People slowed down. Connection returned. From a psychological perspective, this matters. Vulnerability reduces social threat. When people sense honesty, they adjust their communication. This creates a safer environment for language practice. I wasn't failing at English. I was learning it the human way. Daily struggle taught me consistency, not intensity. 10 calm minutes of focused listening helped more than an hour of frustrated study. Repetition without pressure trained my ear. Speaking without fear trained my voice. Over time, English stopped feeling like an exam and started feeling like a tool. If English is your daily struggle right now, know this. Struggle does not mean stagnation. It means adaptation. Every misunderstood sentence is data. Every awkward pause is practice. Progress hides inside routine. English did not become easier overnight. But it became familiar. And familiarity, slowly and quietly, turned into confidence. Love grew under pressure. Love did not arrive in my life like a movie scene. It entered quietly, under pressure, wrapped in misunderstandings, pauses, and imperfect English. In a new country, love does not only test your heart. It tests your patience, your identity, and the language you use to explain who you are. For me, love in the United States became one of the most powerful teachers of real English I have ever known. When I met the person who would later become my partner, English was already a daily challenge. But now it carried weight. Words were no longer just tools for survival. They carried emotions, intentions, vulnerability. Every sentence mattered more. And that pressure exposed my weaknesses quickly. I struggled to express subtle feelings. I worried about sounding cold when I meant to be caring, or confusing when I meant to be honest. Psychologists explain that emotional conversations require higher cognitive load than practical ones. Your brain must manage language, emotion, and social awareness at the same time. In a second language, this can feel overwhelming. My mind often froze in serious conversations. Silence filled the space where words should have been. At first, I blamed my English. Later, I realized I was learning something deeper, how to slow down emotionally. Love forced me to listen in a new way. Not for vocabulary, but for meaning. Tone became more important than grammar. A soft "it's okay" meant more than perfect sentences. Research in communication shows that emotional understanding relies heavily on nonverbal cues. Eye contact, pauses, and timing carry meaning beyond words. This realization reduced my fear. I didn't need perfect English to be understood. I needed presence. Still, misunderstandings happened. Small ones at first. A missed joke. A delayed reply. A sentence interpreted differently than intended. Each misunderstanding created pressure. And pressure, if handled poorly, destroys patience. If handled gently, it builds it. We learn to repeat. To clarify. To ask instead of assume. These habits are the foundation of both healthy relationships and effective language learning. One evening stands out. We were discussing something important, and I felt my English slipping away. My thoughts were clear in my mind but tangled in my mouth. Frustration rose. Instead of pushing through, I paused and said, "I need time to explain this." That simple sentence changed everything. Time slowed. The conversation waited for me. I learned that asking for time is an act of courage, not weakness. Language researchers note that emotional safety increases language output. When learners feel safe, they speak more, experiment more, and retain more. Love created that safety for me. It gave me a space where mistakes were not corrected harshly, but understood. In return, my English grew stronger, not faster, but deeper. Love also taught me repetition without boredom. In relationships, you explain feelings again and again. In different words. On different days. This natural repetition strengthened my vocabulary. Words like expectation, compromise, support, and patience stopped being abstract. They became lived experiences. Cognitive science confirms that emotionally charged words are remembered more easily. Love turned English into memory. Cultural differences added complexity. In American culture, emotional expression is often direct. Say what you feel. Say it clearly. For someone raised in a different communication style, this felt risky. Directness felt like exposure. But love encouraged me to try. Each honest sentence built trust. Each pause allowed understanding. Culture did not disappear. It blended. There were moments when English failed completely. Silence took over. Tears replaced sentences. And surprisingly, connection remained. This taught me something important for learners. Communication is more than language. Language supports connection, but it does not create it alone. Knowing this removed some pressure. When pressure decreased, English flowed more naturally. Over time, I noticed my English improving specifically in emotional situations. I could explain feelings with fewer words. I could listen without translating. My patience expanded. Not because I practiced harder, but because I cared more. Motivation rooted in relationship is powerful. Studies show that emotional relevance increases learning persistence. Love kept me going when textbooks couldn't. If you are learning English and feeling pressure in relationships, romantic or otherwise, remember this. Growth happens under pressure when patience is present. Take your time. Ask for space. Speak slowly. Real English lives in honesty, not speed. Love did not make English easy. It made it meaningful. And meaning, over time, transforms struggle into strength. Marriage tested my nerves. Marriage in a new country does not begin with romance. It begins with adjustment. Small decisions, shared spaces, and quiet expectations suddenly carry weight. For me, marriage in the United States became a daily exercise in patience, not because love was missing, but because language, culture, and stress were always present in the room with us. When two people build a life together, they bring habits formed over many years. Add a second language, and every habit needs explanation. Simple routines, paying bills, planning schedules, discussing responsibilities, require words, clarity, and emotional balance. English became the bridge and the obstacle at the same time. I often knew what I wanted to say, but not how to say it calmly. Marriage revealed how easily stress travels through language. A sentence spoken without the right tone can sound harsh. A pause can be misunderstood as distance. Cultural expectations amplified this. In American culture, direct communication is valued. Say what you mean. Address issues early. For someone still shaping their English, this directness can feel overwhelming. I felt pressure to respond quickly and clearly, even when my emotions needed time. Psychologists describe this tension as cognitive overload. When emotional intensity and language processing happen simultaneously, the brain struggles to regulate responses. This explained why small disagreements felt bigger in English. It wasn't the issue. It was the effort required to express it. I noticed my nerves tightening during serious conversations. My shoulders stiffened. My speech became rushed. Rushing created mistakes. Mistakes created frustration. The cycle repeated. Marriage did not create impatience, but it exposed it. And exposure is the first step toward change. One turning point came during an argument that wasn't really an argument. It was about something small, plans for the weekend. But my response came out sharper than intended. Silence followed. That silence was heavy. Instead of defending myself, I stopped and listened. Not to words, but to emotion. I realized my nervous system was reacting faster than my values. That awareness slowed me down. From that day, I practiced something simple but powerful. I named my state before my message. I feel stressed. I need a minute. I'm trying to explain this clearly. These phrases are not advanced English, but they create space. Research in emotional regulation shows that labeling emotions reduces their intensity. It also helps listeners respond with empathy. Marriage became calmer when language became transparent. English practice inside marriage is constant and real. You cannot avoid it. You negotiate meaning every day. Over time, this repetition strengthened my confidence. I learned phrases that mattered. Not academic vocabulary, but relational language. Let's figure this out. I didn't mean that. Thank you for waiting. These sentences carry peace. Marriage also taught me the power of listening without preparing a response. In another language, the urge to plan your reply is strong. You worry you'll forget words. But real listening requires letting go of control. When I truly listened, my partner felt heard. When my partner felt heard, patience grew. Communication research confirms this. Feeling understood reduces conflict more than perfect wording ever could. Cultural differences did not disappear in marriage. They surfaced. Attitudes toward time, responsibility, and expression collided. Instead of viewing these as problems, we learned to treat them as information. Curiosity replaced judgment. This mindset shift reduced emotional threat and improved language flow. Learning English became part of learning each other. There were moments when my English felt insufficient to carry the weight of marriage. On those days, I reminded myself that clarity grows over time. Fluency is not only about speed. It is about alignment between intention and expression. That alignment develops through patience. Scientific studies on bilingual relationships show that couples who allow slower communication report higher satisfaction. Slowness creates reflection. Reflection creates understanding. Marriage taught me that slowing down is not avoidance. It is care. If you are learning English and navigating marriage or long-term relationships, know this. Struggle does not mean incompatibility. It means growth is happening. Take breaks. Use simple words. Repeat yourself. Ask for understanding. Marriage tested my nerves, but it strengthened my patience. And patience, more than grammar or vocabulary, became the foundation of my English. Family life slows you down. Family life in the United States did not arrive with a clear instruction manual. It arrived in small moments, shared meals, quiet evenings, unexpected responsibilities, and long conversations that didn't always have the right words. When family became part of my daily life here, something unexpected happened. Everything slowed down. And in that slowing down, my relationship with English began to change. Before family life, I treated English like a task. Something to practice, improve, and measure. After family entered the picture, English became a bridge. It connected routines, emotions, and care. Children, especially, do not rush language. They live inside repetition. They ask the same questions again and again. They narrate their world in simple sentences. Watching this reminded me of something important. Language grows naturally when life is allowed to move at a human pace. In family settings, communication must be clear but gentle. You explain, you reassure, you repeat. There is no reward for sounding advanced. There is value in being understood. Cognitive science supports this. The brain retains language better when it is used repeatedly in meaningful contexts. Family life creates those contexts naturally. English practice at home looked different from formal study. It appeared in bedtime stories, casual conversations, and everyday instructions. Wash your hands. It's time to eat. Let's go outside. These phrases may seem basic, but they are powerful. They anchor language in action. Linguists call this situated learning. Words tied to physical routines are processed more deeply and recalled more easily. Family life also softened my inner critic. When you communicate with people who depend on you emotionally, perfection loses importance. Clarity and warmth matter more. I stopped worrying about accents or grammar mistakes. I focused on tone, on intention, on being present. This reduced anxiety, and reduced anxiety improved fluency. There were moments of frustration, of course. Explaining rules, boundaries, or emotions in a second language can be exhausting. On tired days, words felt heavy. But family taught me patience through necessity. You cannot rush understanding with people you love. You wait. You try again. You choose calm over speed. Psychological research shows that repeated calm interactions strengthen emotional regulation. Family life forced me to practice this daily. As my emotional regulation improved, so did my English. My sentences became steadier. My listening became deeper. The connection between emotional calm and language clarity became impossible to ignore. Family conversations also introduced new vocabulary connected to care, growth, and responsibility. Words like support, routine, balance, and future entered my daily speech. These words carried weight because they reflected real concerns. Emotionally relevant vocabulary sticks. This is not theory. It is how the brain works. Another quiet lesson came from observing children learn language. They make mistakes constantly. They repeat themselves. They pause. They are not embarrassed. Their confidence comes from permission to try. Watching this, I realized how harsh I had been with myself. Family life reminded me that learning is messy by nature. Slowness became a gift. Meals took longer. Conversations unfolded gradually. Silence was allowed. In those pauses, listening improved. When I stopped filling every gap with words, understanding grew. Communication scholars note that silence can increase mutual understanding by allowing processing time. Family life provided that space naturally. There were evenings when everyone was tired, and English felt thin. On those nights, simple words were enough. It's okay. We'll try tomorrow. These phrases carried comfort. Comfort builds trust. Trust creates a safe environment for language growth. This cycle strengthened both family bonds and my English skills. Living as a family in a new country also reshaped my identity. I was no longer just a learner trying to survive. I was a caregiver, a partner, a guide. That role demanded presence more than performance. Language followed that demand. If you are learning English and building family life at the same time, know this. Slowness is not a setback. It is alignment. When life slows, learning deepens. Allow routines to teach you. Allow repetition to strengthen you. Family life slowed me down, and in that gentle slowdown, English finally felt like it belonged to my life, not just my goals. Policies teach quiet lessons. Life in the United States is shaped not only by people and culture, but by systems. Forms, rules, procedures, appointments, and policies quietly guide daily life. When I first encountered these systems, I thought they were obstacles. Over time, I realized they were teachers. They taught patience without emotion, consistency without explanation, and English without sympathy. Policies do not rush for you. They do not slow down either. They exist in fixed language, clear steps, and specific timelines. For a language learner, this can feel intimidating. Every document demands attention. Every instruction expects understanding. Missing one detail can delay everything. At first, this pressure increased my anxiety. Later, it reshaped my approach to English. In many countries, personal relationships help you navigate systems. In the U.S., systems expect self-navigation. This independence is empowering, but also demanding. Reading becomes essential. Listening becomes precise. English shifts from conversational to functional. Cognitive research shows that task-based language use improves accuracy because it requires focused attention. Policies forced me into that focus. I remember filling out my first long form. The language was formal, distant, and unforgiving. I read each sentence slowly, sometimes 3 times. My impatience surfaced immediately. I wanted to skip. To guess. To finish quickly. But guessing with policies carries consequences. That realization changed my behavior. I slowed down, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. This kind of forced slowness is powerful. It trains attention. It strengthens reading comprehension. It teaches you how English works when precision matters. Policies introduced me to a different register of English. Not emotional. Not casual. Clear. Neutral. Direct. Understanding this register improved my overall comprehension. Appointments became another lesson. In the U.S., time is structured. You schedule. You wait. You follow instructions. If you arrive early, you wait. If you arrive late, you may lose your chance. These experiences taught me that patience is embedded in the system. Waiting is not wasted time. It is part of the process. During long waits, I listened. Conversations around me. Announcements. Background language. This passive exposure built familiarity. Research in language acquisition shows that repeated exposure in low-stress environments improves listening skills. Policies created those environments unintentionally. Phone calls were the hardest. Automated systems speak clearly but quickly. Options stack. Numbers repeat. At first, I panicked. I missed information. I hung up. Over time, I learned to listen for keywords. Press. For. If. These signals guided me. Listening became strategic. This skill transferred to real conversations. Policies also taught emotional regulation. There is no one to convince. No one to rush. You adjust or you wait. Accepting this reduced frustration. Reduced frustration improved comprehension. Emotional calm and language understanding are deeply connected. Neuroscience confirms that regulated emotions improve working memory, essential for language processing. Written English from policies also expanded my vocabulary in practical ways. Words like eligibility, deadline, verification, and confirmation became familiar. These words appeared repeatedly. Repetition reinforced learning. Meaning was clear because consequences were real. Language stuck. There were moments of failure. Missed documents. Incorrect submissions. Delays. Each failure taught resilience. Instead of blaming my English, I learned to ask questions. Asking for clarification became a skill. Can you explain this part? What does this mean? These are powerful sentences. Simple. Direct. Effective. Policy language is not warm, but it is consistent. Once you understand its patterns, it becomes predictable. Predictability reduces cognitive load. Reduced load improves confidence. Confidence improves fluency. This chain reaction changed how I viewed official English. Living within these systems also taught me something philosophical. Patience is not always emotional. Sometimes it is structural. You do not feel patient. You behave patiently. And behavior shapes mindset over time. If you are learning English and feel overwhelmed by rules, documents, and procedures, remember this. These systems are training your attention and endurance. They are not designed to be friendly. They are designed to be clear. Clarity is learnable. Policies taught me quiet lessons. They did not encourage me. They did not motivate me. They required me to slow down, read carefully, and wait. In doing so, they strengthened my English and my patience at the same time. Learning English through life. Learning English did not truly begin when I opened a textbook. It began when I stopped separating language from life. For a long time, I treated English as something outside my real experiences, something to practice before living fully. That separation created pressure. Once English became part of daily life, not preparation for it, everything changed. Daily routines became lessons. Not formal lessons, but lived ones. Ordering food, talking to neighbors, reading messages, solving problems, each situation carried vocabulary, tone, and rhythm. Language researchers call this experiential learning. When language is tied to action, the brain stores it differently. Words are no longer abstract symbols. They become tools connected to memory, emotion, and purpose. I began narrating my life quietly, sometimes out loud, sometimes in my head. Simple sentences. I am tired. I am waiting. I need to decide. This habit trained my brain to think in English without urgency. Over time, those sentences linked together naturally. Fluency grew not from speed, but from familiarity. Listening improved when I let go of control. Instead of forcing understanding, I allowed English to wash over me. Television, conversations, background noise. At first, it felt unproductive. Then patterns emerged. Repeated phrases. Familiar sounds. Listening became less effortful. Studies show that repeated low-pressure exposure builds comprehension gradually. This is how children learn. Life provided the repetition. Reading followed a similar path. Instead of challenging texts, I chose relevant ones. Messages. Instructions. Short articles connected to my interests. Meaning mattered more than difficulty. Comprehension increased because motivation increased. Motivation is a powerful cognitive enhancer. When you care, your brain pays attention. Speaking grew from necessity, not confidence. I spoke because life required it. I asked questions. I clarified misunderstandings. I expressed needs. Mistakes happened. They mattered less. Each mistake provided feedback. Over time, feedback shaped improvement. This process mirrors natural language acquisition. Formal accuracy comes later. Communication comes first. Life also taught me patience with my accent. I stopped trying to erase it. Accent became part of my story. Research shows that intelligibility matters more than accent reduction. Once I focused on clarity instead of perfection, my speech relaxed. People understood me better. I understood myself better. Emotions played a central role. English connected to frustration, joy, love, stress. Emotional experiences anchored language deeply. Neuroscience confirms that emotionally charged experiences enhance memory consolidation. Life ensured that language stuck, whether I wanted it to or not. I noticed my English improving in moments I didn't expect. During laughter. During conflict. During silence. These moments were not planned. They were lived. Life does not schedule lessons. It offers them. Reflection strengthened learning. At the end of the day, I reviewed conversations mentally. Not to criticize, but to understand. What worked? What didn't? This reflective practice deepened awareness. Metacognition, the ability to think about thinking, improves learning outcomes. Life created space for that reflection. I stopped measuring progress by vocabulary size or grammar accuracy. I measured it by ease. Conversations felt lighter. Listening required less effort. Reading felt smoother. These subtle changes signaled real growth. Learning English through life also shifted my identity. I was no longer a student waiting to be ready. I was a participant learning while living. This mindset reduced pressure. Reduced pressure improved performance. The cycle reinforced itself. If you are learning English and feel stuck, consider this approach. Bring language into your life instead of pushing life away until language improves. Speak slowly. Listen patiently. Live fully. English learned through life is not fast. It is durable. It grows roots. It stays. Science behind patience. Patience sounds like a moral trait, something you either have or you don't. Living and learning English in the United States taught me a different truth. Patience is biological. It lives in the nervous system, shapes attention, and directly affects how language is processed in the brain. Understanding this changed how I learned English, because it removed blame and replaced it with strategy. When you feel rushed, your body reacts first. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tighten. This is not a character flaw. It is the nervous system detecting pressure. Neuroscience calls this the stress response. Under stress, the brain prioritizes survival over learning. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for language, planning, and memory, becomes less active. This explains why English disappears exactly when you need it most. I noticed this pattern clearly. During calm moments, my English felt accessible. During stressful ones, even simple words hid. At first, I believed stress meant I was unprepared. Science showed me stress meant my brain was protecting me. That realization softened my inner dialogue. Kindness toward myself lowered stress. Lower stress improved language access. The loop reversed. Patience works because it regulates the nervous system. Slow breathing, pauses, and acceptance signal safety to the brain. When the brain feels safe, it opens resources for learning. Studies show that relaxed attention improves working memory, essential for holding words long enough to form sentences. This is why slow English practice works better than rushed drills. Another scientific insight involves dopamine, the brain's motivation chemical. Dopamine is released when progress feels achievable. When goals are too large or timelines too short, dopamine drops. Motivation fades. Patience sets realistic expectations, allowing small wins to register. Each small win reinforces learning behavior. This is not motivation talk. It is neurochemistry. Language learning also relies on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change with repetition. Neuroplastic changes happen slowly. They require consistency more than intensity. Impatience pushes intensity. Patience supports consistency. This is why 10 calm minutes a day outperform occasional long sessions driven by frustration. The brain prefers regular signals over dramatic effort. I tested this unintentionally. On days I forced myself to study longer while tired, my retention dropped. On days I stopped early, feeling calm, my recall improved. Research confirms this pattern. Fatigue impairs consolidation of new information. Rest and patience protect it. Patience also influences listening. The auditory system processes language in chunks, not individual words. When you rush to decode every sound, comprehension suffers. Slower listening allows the brain to predict and fill gaps. Predictive processing is a key mechanism in fluent understanding. Patience gives the brain time to predict accurately. Emotion plays a role too. Strong emotions narrow attention. Mild, regulated emotions expand it. This is why frustration blocks learning while curiosity enhances it. Patience creates emotional space. Space allows curiosity. Curiosity drives engagement. Engagement drives learning. This chain is supported by decades of cognitive psychology research. Sleep is another factor. Impatient learning often sacrifices rest. Sleep is when the brain consolidates language patterns. Without it, practice weakens. Patience respects biological limits. It understands that stopping is part of progress. Knowing this changed how I structured my days. I stopped late-night cramming. My English improved. There is also social neuroscience. Feeling judged activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Impatience with yourself mimics judgment. Self-criticism increases cortisol, the stress hormone. Patience lowers cortisol. Lower cortisol improves memory and retrieval. Treating yourself kindly is not emotional indulgence. It is a learning strategy. I applied this science practically. Before conversations, I slowed my breathing. During listening, I allowed missing words. After mistakes, I paused instead of apologizing excessively. These small adjustments aligned my nervous system with learning. Progress became steady. Patience does not mean passivity. It means strategic calm. It means working with the brain instead of against it. Science does not demand perfection. It rewards alignment. If English learning feels heavy, it may not be a language problem. It may be a nervous system problem. Slow down the body, and the mind will follow. Understanding the science behind patience gave me permission to learn at a human pace. And at that pace, English finally stayed. Small habits changed everything. Big change never announced itself in my life. It arrived quietly, disguised as small habits that felt almost too simple to matter. For a long time, I believed improvement required dramatic effort. Long study sessions. Perfect plans. Strong motivation. What actually changed my English, my patience, and my confidence in the United States were tiny, repeatable actions that fit into real life without resistance. One of the first habits was slowing the start of my day. Instead of immediately checking my phone or rushing into tasks, I spent a few minutes noticing my surroundings and naming them in English. The light is soft. The room is quiet. I feel calm. This may sound insignificant, but neuroscience shows that calm morning routines regulate cortisol levels. Lower cortisol improves focus and memory throughout the day. That habit prepared my brain for English before I even realized it. Another habit was choosing consistency over ambition. I stopped asking, how much should I study? And started asking, what can I repeat daily without stress? The answer was short listening sessions. 5 to 10 minutes of slow, clear English. Sometimes a story. Sometimes a conversation clip. I listened without subtitles first, then with them. Research in language acquisition confirms that repeated exposure to the same material builds deeper comprehension than constant novelty. Familiarity breeds fluency. Speaking habits changed too. I stopped practicing English only in safe, imaginary situations. I practiced it where life happened. Saying small sentences out loud while doing chores. Explaining my thoughts slowly during walks. These habits trained my brain to associate English with movement and presence. Cognitive science calls this embodied cognition. When language is linked to physical action, recall improves. Writing also became lighter. Instead of long journals, I wrote 3 simple sentences at the end of the day. What happened? How I felt. One thing I learned. This habit strengthened narrative thinking, which is essential for speaking fluently. Stories organize language naturally. This is why storytelling is such a powerful method for learning English. Another small habit was allowing mistakes to finish. I used to stop mid-sentence if I sensed an error. That habit broke fluency and increased anxiety. I trained myself to finish thoughts anyway. Communication research shows that listeners focus on meaning more than form. Finishing sentences improved confidence and clarity, even with imperfections. Pausing became a habit as well. Pausing before answering questions. Pausing after mistakes. Pausing instead of rushing to apologize. These pauses regulated my nervous system. They gave my brain time to retrieve words. Over time, pauses felt natural instead of awkward. This habit alone transformed conversations. I also built a habit of asking for repetition without shame. Can you say that again? Can you speak a little slower? These sentences are not advanced, but they are powerful. They protect comprehension and reduce cognitive overload. Social psychology research shows that clear requests reduce miscommunication and build rapport. People responded positively more often than I expected. Another quiet habit was noticing progress without measuring it. I stopped testing myself constantly. Instead, I noticed ease. Conversations felt less heavy. Listening felt less tiring. Reading flowed more smoothly. These subjective signs matter. Motivation increases when progress feels internal rather than evaluated. The brain rewards ease with dopamine, reinforcing behavior. Sleep became part of my English habits. I protected rest. I stopped late-night studying. Language consolidation happens during sleep. Studies show that sleep strengthens grammar and pronunciation patterns. Rest was not laziness. It was strategy. Even emotional habits shifted. I practiced naming emotions before responding. I feel overwhelmed. I feel unsure. Emotional labeling reduces intensity and improves communication. This habit improved both relationships and English clarity. Over months, these small habits rewired my learning. Neuroplasticity works through repetition, not force. Each habit sent a signal to my brain: English is safe. English is part of life. English does not require urgency. The most important habit was patience with the process. Not passive patience, but active trust. Trust that small actions compound. Trust that consistency beats intensity. Trust that fluency grows quietly before it becomes visible. If you feel stuck learning English, look smaller, not bigger. Ask what you can repeat calmly. Let habits carry you when motivation fades. Small habits changed everything for me. They will do the same for you. A gentle, happy ending. The ending of this story did not arrive with applause or sudden clarity. It arrived quietly, almost unnoticed, like a calm morning after a long season of storms. One day, I realized I was no longer fighting English, no longer fighting the country around me, and no longer fighting myself. Life in the United States had not become easier in every way, but I had become steadier inside it. Patience did not turn me into a different person. It returned me to myself. The impatient version of me who arrived years ago wanted results, approval, and certainty. The patient version learned to accept progress, connection, and time. That shift changed everything. English stopped being a wall and became a window. I noticed it in small moments. Conversations that flowed without preparation. Jokes I understood without translating. Silence that felt comfortable instead of threatening. These moments were not dramatic, but they were deeply satisfying. Cognitive psychology calls this automaticity, the stage where skills operate with less conscious effort. Automaticity is not speed. It is ease. Family life felt warmer. Marriage felt lighter. Disagreements no longer escalated quickly. English allowed me to explain, but patience allowed me to listen. Those two skills together created balance. Studies in relationship psychology show that mutual understanding depends more on timing and tone than perfect wording. I was living proof of that. My relationship with learning changed too. I stopped asking when I would be fluent. I started asking how present I could be today. Presence improved everything. Listening sharpened. Speaking relaxed. Reading felt natural. Presence is not taught in textbooks, but it is the foundation of real English. The happy ending is not perfection. I still make mistakes. I still ask for repetition. I still pause. But those things no longer feel like failures. They feel like part of communication. Linguists remind us that even native speakers adjust constantly. Communication is a shared effort, not a performance. Patience also changed how I saw others. I became more tolerant of accents, pauses, and differences. Living in a multicultural country taught me that English belongs to everyone who uses it. This realization removed pressure. When pressure left, confidence stayed. The science supports this outcome. Long-term language success correlates with emotional regulation, consistent exposure, and meaningful use. My journey followed that pattern naturally once I stopped resisting it. Learning aligned with life instead of competing with it. There was a moment that symbolized this ending clearly. Someone asked me, "How long have you been here?" I answered without thinking. The sentence came out naturally. No tension. No pride. Just fact. That simplicity meant more to me than any test score. This story is mine, but the lesson is shared. If you are learning English and feeling tested by climate, culture, love, family, or systems, know this. Patience is not waiting for things to improve. It is allowing improvement to happen. Real English grows in real life. Through stories. Through relationships. Through mistakes and pauses. Through days when nothing seems to change and weeks when everything feels different. Trust that process. The gentle happy ending is not an ending at all. It is a continuation. A steady walk instead of a sprint. A conversation instead of a performance. A life lived in another language, one patient moment at a time. What is testing your patience right now? Whatever it is, it may be teaching you more than you realize. Patience did not change my accent overnight. It did not erase every mistake or make life in America suddenly simple. What it did was much quieter and much stronger. It taught me how to stay when everything inside me wanted to quit. It taught me how to listen before I spoke, how to slow down instead of giving up, and how to let English grow naturally through real life, real love, real frustration, and real hope. If you are learning English right now and feel stuck, tired, or invisible, this story is not finished for you yet. What you are struggling with today may be shaping the confidence you will feel tomorrow. Every pause, every misunderstood sentence, every awkward silence is not failure, it is training. Real English is not learned by rushing. It is learned by staying. And maybe the real question is not how fast you can learn English, but how patient you are willing to become while learning it. If this story felt like it was speaking directly to you, there are many more real English stories waiting here, stories about life in the United States, culture shock, love, family, marriage, and learning English through emotions, not textbooks. These are stories you don't just listen to, you feel them, and you learn from them naturally. So don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, stay with the journey, and let English become part of your life, slowly, calmly, and confidently. Because the next story might be the one that finally changes how you learn English forever.